It is my pleasure to bring you the message this morning, and to be honest, I'm very excited. I feel like God has just been speaking quite clearly to me about something that I'm really glad to be bringing this morning. So come on a journey with me as we walk through the last few days of my life. The last 3 mornings have actually been really annoying for me. I have woken up at 4 a.m. on the dot every morning. Do you guys ever have mornings like that when you wake up at an ungodly hour? Mike, excellent. But I think a number of us do. We wake up at ungodly hours in the morning and we think, what are we doing right now? God, are you trying to speak to me? What's going on? But the reason that I woke up and have woken up at 4 a.m. for the last 3 mornings is because someone has been shining a ridiculously bright light outside my window directly at it. Well, that's what I thought. I woke up each morning with light blaring through the gaps that are in my curtain. I honestly, in my 4 a.m. days, thought that someone was outside with a floodlight aiming it at my window to try to disturb me. I really felt it. It was so bright. And so I got up, to kind of sort out what was going on. I actually thought of you, Paul, and thought, Paul's probably out there. There's an emergency. There are police out there with floodlights. This is what was going through my head at 4 a.m. the first time. And I went to the window, and out there was the most massive moon, shining so brightly, illuminating everything. And so when I got my mind into the right place and stopped worrying about an emergency that was happening, I stopped and I looked at what was going on outside my window, and it was simply beautiful. There were amazing hues of blues and whites, and the trees looked magical, and the frosty grass looked, enchanting. It was just, everything looked so beautiful. And I enjoyed it for a while, and I stood there and I remember thinking, God, you are amazing, the detail that you bring. And then it was 4 a.m., so I went back to bed and went to sleep again, which was good. The second morning, yesterday morning, the same thing happened again. At 4 a.m., apparently it gets very bright then. Has anyone else noticed the very bright moon? Good, a couple of you have. Seriously, the same thing happened again, but this time I was not fooled. I knew it wasn't somebody outside with a light on my window, but I got up again to appreciate it and went back to bed again saying, thank you, God. That was just stunning. Thank you for that. And I woke a few hours later, and as you guys know, the sun is rising pretty close to 8 a.m. at the moment. I didn't rise at 8 a.m. But as the sun was rising yesterday morning, I started seeing another beautiful light display. It was beautiful yesterday. I don't know if anyone saw that, but the colours in the sky were stunning. There were pinks and oranges and yellows and purples and greys and blues, everything. And I just sat there again in wonder, looking at what God was doing with the sky. And I enjoyed it so much. That show, sadly, only lasted for about 15 minutes because eventually the sun got so bright that it was just doing its full strength on everything, which is even strong for the winter sun in the UK. And it just took away all the beautiful hues in the sky and the reflections on the trees and just became bright light. But I enjoyed both light shows immensely. God is a master artist. I think that he is the best artist in the world. That was the moon. God is the master artist. And I think the most amazing craftsman. One of my most favourite ways to enjoy God is to marvel at his creation and marvel at the huge things that he has created in the world. It makes me think of him as unconquerable and uncontainable. You know those words when we sing in that indescribable song? That's the way I like to think of my God. I'm just going to take this earring off. That's the way I like to think of my God. And when I think of nature, I think of huge oceans and endless plains and big mountains. I like to think of a big God. And to some of you that might sound strange, but what it does for me is it reminds me that if he's so big and got his hand over the huge, enormous things of this world, how could he forget someone like me? Like I'm nothing. He doesn't have to create massive mountains or put the tides into motion. I'm just little old Jen. And how could he forget me? How could the God that can make the impossible possibly forget me? It's impossible. So I love to think of the big God. The passage in Jeremiah, one that I'm sure we all know really well, is Jeremiah 29:11. And it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." That's my big God, my big, amazing, unconquerable, uncontainable God who can do all things. He absolutely is not going to forget the plans he has for me, just like he's not going to forget the plans that he has for each of us. Now, I grew up in Australia, as most of you know, which is a country that gives God a lot of scope to display his grandeur. We're a big country. On most coastlines in Australia, you can stand on the beach and look out to the water that will go thousands of kilometres before it will hit something, which is pretty amazing. You can feel very, insignificant in the midst of the hugeness of Australia. The same goes when I look up at the sky. At home, if I described our skies, I would say we have big skies, just big skies that seem to go on forever. And I remember when I first came to the UK 20 years ago, I remember absolutely being aware of the fact that I felt that there were small skies here. Now, I know that's not true. I'm a science teacher. I know it's impossible. So I know it's not true. But as I've thought about it, what I think probably is happening is the clouds sit lower here. And so it feels like there's more of a ceiling. In Australia, the clouds sit really high, really far away, and it just feels enormous, even on a cloudy day. So there's a lot of scope for the bigness of God in Australia. I have a friend who is a great photographer. Actually, I have a few friends who are good photographers. But I have one in Australia who takes amazing pictures of the landscape and the colours that he sees. This is a picture of my hometown. And you can see the beautiful colours that exist in the skies. That sky just looks immense, doesn't it? And he's got so many of them. They're just stunning. And he loves to take pictures. He gets his drone and he sends it up into the sky and takes stunning pictures of the sky. But those pictures just remind me of the artist that God is. He's an artist every single day. He creates something big and amazing and wonderful for us to see. But if you look at those, there's an ingredient that is absolutely essential in each of them, in any picture that we see, and that is the ingredient of light. If there was no light there, we would look at a black panorama. We wouldn't see the beautiful colours in the sky. We wouldn't see the clouds. We wouldn't see the beautiful blues of the water. We wouldn't see anything. Light is needed so that we can see the fullness of what God has created. So with my early morning wake-up calls, I've gone back to sleep. I haven't stayed awake. I've gone back to sleep and woken a couple of hours later, like I said, to pitch black. Because the full moon has done its thing, it's gone and moved on, and it's just black outside, which I find quite strange. It's like God does a special light show in the middle of the night that a few people see, and then he puts it away for another day. But each time, I feel like the true brilliance of God's design is seen as light is in the picture, as light is part of what's going on. I want to ask you a question. Do you remember the very first thing that God ever commanded? Let there be light. The very first thing in verse 3 of chapter 1, let there be light. And I was thinking and pondering about this, and I thought, I wonder if the very first thing that he created was light, this beautiful, powerful, amazing source that illuminated everything, because he wanted his creation to be bathed in his glory. He wanted us, as his creation, as he was, growing us and creating us and developing us, to reflect back that very first thing that he had said, let there be light. Light is an essential part of God. Now, we know that it started out really well in the Garden of Eden, and Adam and Eve were really happy, until they decided that they wanted to understand this thing that had been held back from them, evil. And so they went on this path of choosing evil and invited darkness to join the light in their life. So they invited darkness. And we know that just 10 generations later, we're in a big mess. Now, granted, those generations were very long back then, but they had 10 generations to really see what this darkness, this evil that they'd really wanted to know about was all about. And they walked that path, discovering what that looked like. And in that process, cut God out, cut the light out, chose the darkness, these pictures minus the light, instead of the light. And we know that at the end, it got to the point where there was almost no good at all. And this is what God says. This is in Genesis 6, verses 5 to 8. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. So a lot of darkness, not much light there at all. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe them from the face of the earth, the human race I've created, and with them all the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And we know what happened. The flood came. We had 8 people that were basically left to reset humanity. That dark choice that had been made, which we still live in today, had affected people so much because God had been cut out completely. The light had been taken away and the darkness overwhelmed. At the end of the flood, God again used light to remind Noah and the people that would come that he was there and that he was good, and that there was a choice to fall into the darkness or to remember and hold on to the light. We all know this picture very well. We've all seen a million rainbows in the sky. But it's a reminder that God used that is light. That's pure light shining there in the sky that God used again. At the very beginning of creation, he started with let there be light. And then as he kind of reset things, he started again with a promise that he used light in. And this light demonstrates to us so many things about who he is. God never promised that there wouldn't be storms anymore. He never said, I'm not going to bring hardship on you. I'm going to keep all the evil away from you. Let's just keep you on the light side, the good side. We'll protect you from the bad. He didn't say that. What he did say is, I will never wipe you out again. I will never completely destroy you. I will never let you be completely overwhelmed how you were before. So it's a promise. This light is a promise and a reminder that we see all the time. But there's more to just a rainbow than just a pretty banner that waves in the sky that's super colourful and lovely to see and brings a smile to our faces. There's truth in there. The first one is it talks about the power of God. It's one of those reminders that shows us his awesomeness and majesty. It's like he's got one of those kind of banners that's waving in the sky. Whenever I see a rainbow, I always think that's God waving his banner of light in the sky for us, just to remember he's there. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 26, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The rainbow says, this is mine. I'm claiming it. This is mine. I'm waving my banner, demonstrating his power and authority over the whole earth. The next thing rainbows speak of is the perfection of God. So the rainbow isn't just a ray of light. It's the fullness of what visible light is. It reminds us that when we look and see white light, there's actually a whole lot of other stuff going in the midst of white light. It's not just white light, it's full of colour. God sees perfect, balanced, ordered colour. When we look at white light, we just see white light. He sees that. It's like we get a glimpse through God's eyes of what he really sees. And it also reminds us that when we see white light, we might think that's pure and holy and amazing. But God knows there are multiple facets within that white light. There's red, green, yellow, pink, orange, whatever, all the colours. And it kind of reminds us that God is multifaceted. There's so much to him. We might just simply try to classify him as X, but he is the alphabet and more. There's so much to him. This is a science picture because I'm a science teacher. This is white light that is basically being shot at a prism. And in the prism, it basically causes the white light, instead of to be straight, to kind of spread out like that. And so you see all the colours. And that's what we see in a rainbow. So when we're seeing a rainbow, we're seeing the pure white light that God shoots out from heaven, or the sun, and then seeing it spread out like that around our earth, which is amazing. The third thing that it reminds us of, the rainbow, is the promises of God. He will never, ever break his promises to us. In Matthew 24:35, he says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. There is always hope in God for every situation that we are facing. No matter what we are going through now, whether we feel helpless, in despair, lost, confused, desperate, God knows, and there is a promise in every situation with God. With God, there is always light. There is this light streaming into our lives in every situation with God. And he will never, ever let us down. And the last thing that the rainbow reminds us of is the purposes of God. Because the rainbows only come out after a storm, we're reminded of that, the consequence of sin and difficult times, but the grace of God, that beautiful matching and pairing, that even in the midst of the mess, he will be there. In 2 Corinthians, Paul goes through a time where he's pleading with God about the thorn in his side. You know, we like to talk about the thorn in Paul's side. And he's talking to God, and God says to him, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness." And then Paul says, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." I think that's a really hard passage. Who's super pumped about their weaknesses? I think that's a really hard thing. And Paul says it, I'm sure, with all integrity and honesty and purpose, but it's really hard. The rainbow reminds us that we need God to help us through the storms. If we had no storms, there'd be no need of God or his rainbow. The two go hand in hand. The storms will come in our lives, but the promise is that he will never, ever, ever leave us, which is an amazing promise to hold on to. Okay, I'm just going to quickly go back to this picture because I really like it. Yep. I'm not going to give you a science lesson, anything more than what I've said, but this white light that is beaming at the prism is actually pure energy. That's what light is, pure energy. Energy shooting straight at something, which sounds very much like God. That pure light, let there be light, the energy that he shot into the world would have been amazing. Light can exist without anything else around it, except for its source. It needs a source, but it can exist without anything else around it. Unlike sound, you guys probably know that you can't make sound in space. You know, sound needs to sit on particles of matter. It needs to be touching something so that it can be. Light can be without anything. If none of us were here, light would still be there. Light would still be shining into the universe, and it would never stop. Now imagine that source of light is hitting something really pretty, like this. Now as that pure white light hits those jewels, they reflect back beautifully every colour of the rainbow. They show, you know, stunning depth and they just make you, I don't know, want to touch them or get in there or be involved in the jewels. Well, that's what it makes me do. Maybe not so much for other people, but it's just beautiful. They're beautiful. And they're colourful, and they're just a reflection of God. Like a little part of the rainbow has fallen to the earth. Say I picked out a sapphire, which is my favourite colour, blue, and I shot a white light at it. What colour would I see? Anyone? Blue, well done. Wasn't a trick question, Paul? Yeah, so I see blue. The reason that I see blue, though, is because blue is the only colour that is being reflected back to the world. If you remember, that white light is actually a rainbow. And that means all the colours are being shot straight into that sapphire. The only one that's coming out the other side is blue. That means the red, the yellow, the orange, all the other ones are all being taken in and absorbed into the sapphire and basically being used, disappeared. The only one that remains is the blue, which I think is very interesting. It's the only colour not being absorbed, but it's the only colour that's also being reflected back to the world, in this case of the sapphire. All the other colours have disappeared, but the sapphire is only able to give blue light back. Now let me ask you a question. What would happen if the sapphire was able to take in and absorb all the colours? What would the sapphire look like? Black. It's taken in all the light, and to the world it shows nothing. It's taken, given nothing. Obviously that doesn't happen because sapphires are beautiful. But it's a good analogy for us. Rubies do the same thing. They take in every colour except for red. Topazes do the same thing. They take in every colour but yellow. Emeralds the same. Every colour but green. They shoot that out. They reflect that back to the world. And the same is true for us. That light from God, that amazing let there be light, is pouring upon every single one of us, every single day. And we have a choice to absorb it all, to take it all in and to allow it just to kind of diminish its energy and lose it. Or we have a choice to start reflecting it back to the world. It's an interesting choice that we have to look at. those who say receive a lot of love from God but never give back, what are they showing to the world? Are they showing all the love that they've taken in and it's disappeared and absorbed into them? They're not showing that at all. So we might think that as we take in all of this love from God and, we sit there and we soak in him and we go up for prayer and we do this and we do that, we're taking it all in. If we never, ever give it out, then actually we haven't got anything. Because what we take in without reflecting back is lost. Like the red light that goes into the sapphire, it's lost. Never, ever will the sapphire shine a red light, ever. It's impossible, it's lost. If we want to receive all the blessings from God and all the joy and all the peace, and we keep on seeking after that, we seek after the fruits of the Spirit, and we want this, and we want to feel that, and we want this, and we're taking it all in, but we never reflect any of that back because we're so anxious that we haven't got enough of it, then the reality is we will never be peaceful enough, or we will never be joyful enough, or we will never be gentle or faithful or whatever we want to be enough if we just are always seeking to take. Because it will go in and it will get lost. The energy behind it will simply disappear, like it does up here. So I want to ask you guys a question. What are you reflecting back into the world at the moment? Are you reflecting back love, joy, peace, blessings, encouragement, thankfulness? Are those the things that you are shooting back into the world? Or out of your mouth are coming other things? Disappointment, being disgruntled, gossip, other things. Because if that's what's coming out of your heart, then I can tell you, you're not shining God's light. You've taken it in and it's got stuck and lost in there. So I want to challenge each of us. This is true for me just as much as it's true for any of us. What are we reflecting back of God's amazing, beautiful light into the world? Because I want to be someone that reflects light back to the world. I don't want to be someone who takes, expects, demands, complains, is bitter, is twisted. I want to be someone who is so thankful that God is shining his rainbow light upon me that I get a chance to send that back into the world. That's what I want to be, and I think that's what we all want to be. People that shine that rainbow light back into the world. Sometimes it can feel like we are completely overwhelmed, and we've all gone through times, and maybe you're in one right now, where you feel like you are like a black sapphire or something. All the colour comes in, God's doing everything, he's there, he's saying all the right things, and nothing seems to be shining out. Nothing seems to be sticking. It all seems to be going in and disappearing. I don't know if you guys have those times, but I absolutely have those times sometimes. I feel lost and confused, and I don't know where all of his goodness is going. But that's because sometimes I've taken my eyes off the ultimate light source. In John 8:12 it says, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. I am the rainbow light of the world. Whoever follows me will have the light of life and will never walk in darkness. That's a promise for us as believers in Jesus Christ. He is shining that rainbow light of his right into the very center of who we are because we are his children. We have that every day. We don't have to be good enough to get the rainbow light. He shines it every day for us. In Isaiah 9, it talks about the prophetic words about Jesus saying, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. They lived in a land of shadows, but now the light is shining on them. That's us. We were all born into the land of shadows, every one of us. But the light of Christ shines on us now. And then in John 1, it says this, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This was the true light that comes into the world and shines on all people. That light is there for every single one of us. I guess the question for mankind is, are we going to be Adam and Eve who want to know a bit more about evil and consequently walk in darkness? Or are we going to be like, believers, born-again believers who choose to walk in the light? Because if we do, there's an amazing promise for us. In 1 Peter 2, it says, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of the darkness into his wonderful light. That's what our job is as believers. It's to shine and reflect God's light. We're meant to be the rainbow reflectors into the world. How awesome is that? That's an awesome job title. I'm a rainbow reflector for God. That's amazing. And then it says in Matthew, it says actually directly, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father. It all points back to the awesomeness of who Jesus is. As we reflect, as we become the rainbow reflectors that God calls us to be, God is glorified. God gets the glory. And what better task or purpose could any of us have than to be rainbow reflectors for God? I think that's pretty amazing. Like I said, sometimes we want our lives to be brighter than they are, and sometimes they feel black. Sometimes we get a little bit of love and we think, I just want to hold on to that as much as I possibly can, because this is all I've got, this is it. And if I let go of it and if I give it back to somebody, I might lose it. But I want to encourage each of us with what it says in Timothy. It says, we brought nothing into this world and we will take nothing out of it. So let me encourage you, don't try to hold on to the things that you think you desperately need. God absolutely has the right plan, and it is to share that light with the world, to reflect back his glory, all the colours and all the shades back into the world. Don't be so scared to hold on to the little bit that you think you have now. Even if it feels like a little bit of light, it's impossible. God can only send rainbows. That's his light source, just rainbows. So he's sending you a rainbow. Even if it feels like nothing, it is everything. It is everything that you need. So be encouraged. If you hold on to things sometimes a little bit too much, be encouraged to take a step and to actually put it back out there. Share the joy, share the hope, share the peace, share the love. Share the things that you have, because it will encourage someone else and it will bring glory to your Father. Got one more question for you. What kind of light does a diamond reflect? It reflects white light. If you shine a light, it looks white, which, as we know, is basically the rainbow. So basically, a diamond is the perfect example of what we should try to be. That perfect light that is shone in, it takes nothing for itself. It shoots out every colour back to the world. That's what we want to be. Diamonds. We want to be God's diamonds. God's rainbow reflectors into the world. And if you're shooting back everything, it kind of brings me back to what I've been suffering with at the beginning of each day this week. The moon. The moon is a perfect example of an object that takes all the light and shines it straight back into the world, bright white. Amazing. So I want to encourage us to try to be like the moon, to try to be like diamonds, to try to be God's rainbow reflectors. And that as life gets hard, to remember, you know what, we've got that full source coming straight at us. He's not just sending us a blue light today or a red light today. He's sending you a rainbow every single day. And let's challenge ourselves to work out how to be the rainbow reflectors, the diamonds and the moons that reflect back that pure, beautiful light. There's a passage in Psalm 89 that says it pretty well. Like the moon, it shall be established forever, a faithful witness in the sky. That's what we want to be, faithful witnesses, shining the full, pure amazingness of God's light back into the world. So I'm going to pray for us. Father, I thank you so much that you teach us amazing things. Lord, that you send out rainbows straight into the very hearts of who we are. Lord, that you can never give us just part of your light. Your light is so multifaceted and so amazing that, Lord, when you send it to us, we receive everything. Lord, help us to know that we have received the rainbow light. And Lord, help us to learn how to reflect that back to the world. Lord, in whatever ways you want us to, Lord, that we don't take any of that in for ourselves. We want to be like the moon. We want to be like a diamond, reflecting back, white light, pointing to your glory, giving you all the honour. Father, thank you so much that you take us on these journeys where we can get rid of the things that absorb and suck in things and allow the light to die within us. Thank you for this time here on Nets, Lord, where you do highlight things for us. Thank you for your bringing each one of us here on team and all of our guests and visitors. Father, thank you for bringing us here, that we can recognise that we do have times when light just gets sucked into the very centre of us and just dissipates. Father, help us to deal with those things, because what we want to do is reflect it back to the world. We want to be the diamond. We want to be a diamond in your crown. We want to be the diamond that just says, my God is awesome and amazing and powerful and has purpose, and I trust him, and I'm going to keep on walking with him, regardless of the storms that I walk through, because I have the rainbow light inside me. I pray this in your name. Amen.